Does it matter that in the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson describes indigenous peoples as merciless Indian savages? Of course it matters. In the 27th grievance, the founders blamed King George III for exciting the merciless Indian savages. It's spelled out in the Declaration of Independence, but why use that language? It's classic fear-mongering. Frontier settlers were anxious about indigenous nations allying themselves with the British. Demonizing indigenous people rallied support for the War for Independence. It also has everything to do with land theft, labeling indigenous nations as savages erases tribal sovereignty. It also frames Western expansion as this type of civilization project. And at this time, calling Native American savages is racial common sense. Settler colonial propaganda routinely labeled and stereotyped Native peoples and cultures as being backwards and barbaric. And these racist labels and stereotypes justified genocide and the destruction of indigenous communities. The founding fathers are proclaiming universal rights for wealthy white men. And this document lays the blueprint for future federal Indian policy. We're talking about the 1830 Indian Removal Act, which was basically ethnic cleansing, manifest destiny, and the so-called Indian Wars. You can include in that the forced assimilation policies, the boarding school system, the Dawes Act, which reduced Indian land holdings by 2/3, 20th century policies like the Termination Act, relocation, the exploitation of indigenous resources, the MMIW crisis, the kidnapping, and forced adoption of indigenous children. Each era would recycle that founding slur. Indigenous peoples were savages and needed to be civilized. It's literally been the same script from day one. For Native nations, July 4th marks the moment the United States put genocide into its mission statement. Today, many Native artists and activists have flipped the phrase. Being a savage means you resist settler colonialism and settler violence. Being a savage means you fight for your culture, for your community, and the land. We have the Savages MC, which is an indigenous motorcycle club based around indigenous values and culture. It's about reclaiming a term that was used to dehumanize us. So many of us are proud savages. And of course, not all indigenous peoples like that term, and I completely understand why. Either way, indigenous nations are still here, still resisting, and still fighting.